Data security, protect data where it is vulnerable. So this is where you get into encryption. You want to encrypt it at rest. You want to encrypt it in transit. Sometimes encryption, if you can encrypt your environment, sometimes companies don't encrypt it in transit while it stays in the network. Those are certainly risk-based decisions you can make, but it's pretty standard practice these days. The data is encrypted at rest and it's encrypted in transit, so you definitely want to look at that. That way, if somebody comes in, automatically they have a harder road to hoe with the encryption. But here's the thing too, just goes back to asset management. You got to know where your data is. I don't need to encrypt public information. I need to encrypt PHI or PII. Now, you can encrypt everything if you can do that. That's great. Then it's just all done. That's fine. But you want to make sure you understand where that data is, and so you put those extra protections and those extra guards. Make sure your access control is stripped for that particular data, and try to minimize those roads in. Very important when you design that data security. And then on the endpoints, if somebody loses their laptop or loses their mobile device, have it encrypted, because again, then it's not lost, right? It's lost, but nobody can do anything with it. And so very important that you understand where your data is. That's part of asset management. That you understand the risk of your data. That's part of risk management. And then you protect it with technical controls, for example, encryption, at rest and in transit, backups, and that you have offsite backups or cloud backups, that you encrypt your backups, all of those different stages. Then that's where you start layering in your technical controls where it makes sense. Logging and monitoring, design your systems to be able to detect and investigate incidents. And so standard to turn on logging, let's take a privileged access user. Privileged access user. So you take like a domain administrator, or you take like somebody who has admin rights. Their activity should be logged because they have elevated privileges. If you log that activity, then you can put monitoring in place to look for anomalies of what that person is doing, and then you can look to shut those anomalies down. Even if it's not them doing it per se, it's somebody using that account, using those credentials, and coming in and doing activities or doing some sort of automation, like ransomware breaches, all the stuff we hear about. You have that logging and monitoring in place. You're able to detect that if you have those turned on. Now, do you turn on logging for every last thing? You don't. This goes back to risk management. And you don't monitor every last thing. Nobody has time for that. Logging takes up immense amounts of space, right? It has to be put somewhere. So you got to choose your battles. You got to choose what you're going to log. And so you want to log the high-risk things. Login attempts, privileged access users, anything around like key critical systems or client data or PHI, PII, that's where you want to focus on your logging and your monitoring, because those are your higher risk areas. But that goes back to the risk management. And then I have to say this, it's logging and monitoring. It's not uncommon to find companies that do the logging, and then when I start quizzing them about the monitoring, they look at me like I'm speaking another language, like, we don't know what you mean, monitoring the logging. So great that you turn it on, but if nobody ever looks at it, that's a problem. If you don't have configuration of the tools to be able to alert, and again, a lot of them are becoming much more fancy these days. They've got, general thresholds and alerts that can be turned on. It can auto-create tickets in your ticketing system, which is a great idea. A lot of them are using AI, so they're trying to be more intelligent in the moment of looking for behavior, not just an isolated logged event, but looking for a behavior, a pattern. Like, for example, I just heard this one that from a salesperson that, one file encrypts, two file encrypts, three file encrypts. Stop it right there in its tracks, because that's the behavior of ransomware, right? So a lot of these tools are becoming much more astute at looking for behavior of people, but also of attacks, and then stopping it right where it is. But again, it's part of a bigger strategy of what logging are you going to turn on, where are you going to put it, where are your risk items, how are you going to monitor it, how much of that can you automate, and then when something flags, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to prioritize it? How are you going and capture it and see it all the way to closure. Those are, it's a full end-to-end process, right? And the tool is part of that, but it's that full end-to-end process. Okay, incident management. Plan your responses to cyber incidents in advance. You want to have an incident response plan. You want to have it documented, and you want to go through at least a tabletop exercise. If you have a real incident, you can use your plan to test through a real incident. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you too much, or it's a minor thing. But you definitely want to test your plan. You want to make sure that your communication is in order. You can bring the team together. People understand their responsibilities and their role. It's all documented. It's like playing a game. If you don't have the rules written down and everybody isn't playing by the same rules, it's not going to be a very fun or effective game, right? And so that's what you want to do with your incident response plan. And then on top of this, expect it to happen. Expect it to happen. Like, just expect it. I hope it never happens to you, but expect it. And so if you do, then that means you'll go through the appropriate planning and due diligence necessary to be ready for it. So very important. And then the last one, supply chain security. Collaborate with your suppliers and partners. So very critically important. You are responsible for your business. You are responsible for your data and your clients' data. And yes, we all use partner companies. We all use cloud platforms, cloud infrastructure. We all have this supply chain, these vendors, these partners that we use. It's very important that we have third-party risk management practices in place. We have processes to risk score our vendors and our partners, and then fit appropriate due diligence initially to make the decision to move forward with them or not, and then ongoing to monitor them still that they're an appropriate fit. And then we want to watch the news. Very important. Pay attention. If we see a supplier like Okta that we use, like, oh no, they're in the news, we use them. Be all over that. And so very important that you're constantly managing your supply chain. It's a huge part of breach is they come into the weakest link and they go up the chain until they find what they want and they find something of value. And you don't want to be the one that they came through, and you don't want to be the one that they hit either. And so everybody's kind of fit together these days. So very important that you have your third-party risk management program that fits back to risk management, because again, you can't do due diligence in all your vendors. I literally had a conversation one time with a business leader who said, oh no, we need to run terrorist scans on every one of our vendors. Okay, including the massage therapist that came in one time for Employee Day? Absolutely. We can't pay them if we don't run the terrorist scan on them. Okay, well, what happens when you go down to the local restaurant and you use the company credit card at that place? Are we running terrorist scans on those people because you paid them money too? Okay, that's ridiculous. It goes back to risk, right? It goes back to your overall posture. And you want to be good stewards of your supply chain, but be reasonable. We don't have time to do everything. There's too much. So we want to focus the effort on the high risk areas. We want to focus the efforts on business criticality and the responsibility and the stewardship to our customers, but also to the world. So that is very good. 10 steps to cybersecurity. And so really, just to summarize, risk management kind of fits over everything. Asset management, you gotta know where your stuff is. You can't protect what you don't know you have. You want to engage your people, train your people. Don't try to work away from them being your weakest link. You want to bake security in from the beginning. It's not an afterthought. It's throughout the entire process. Vulnerability management, leaving doors and windows open, is not smart. So that's a great place to focus effort. Identity access management, how you're securing your systems and providing that access in with users and passwords and VPN and MFA and all of those other things, and user access reviews. Data security, how are you protecting your data? Because really that's the prize, right? But you got to know where your data is. And so really understanding what types of data you have, where it lives, and then being able to fit appropriate security. Logging and monitoring so that you can detect when things start to go wrong and be able to take action on that. Incident management, prepare for it to happen and have a plan and test it. And then supply chain security. Don't be someone else's breach, and watch your supply chain, and don't let someone else be your breach. If you like this, please share it. Please also subscribe to the channel so that you can get notifications about future videos.